This is the Creative Soulpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Demas. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast. I have a special treat today. This special treat is a good friend. So, I've had lots and lots of guests on the podcast, and some are friends and some are good friends, and some are people I just kind of barely met. Well, today is a really great friend. Not only are we friends in real life, we've been collaborators together on several projects, actually. And I just really enjoy this incredibly talented human that I know that you're going to enjoy getting to know. Kim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm honored that you're here for a lot of reasons. Let's first talk about we were set up on a blind date. Do you remember this?
Who did that?
Cap 21,
21.
which is in New York. For those of you out there, they're like, what is Cap 21? Cap 21, Eliza Ventura was her name, who set us up on a date. We'd actually met once before, but we didn't
Right.
really know each
Very
other.
brief.
Very,
Yeah.
very briefly. But she set us up for a musical project of yours. And she said, I think that you all need to meet. Now, that's the only setup she's ever done for me ever in my entire life. I never was connected with anybody else through her. But for some reason, she felt the calling for us to meet, which is amazing.
That is amazing. I wonder what she sensed
Yeah,
about us and the project. And anyway, it was a very good setup.
it was indeed, because it's been very fruitful. But I want to go back up now to the beginning of your career. Actually, I wouldn't even go back further than that. I want to
Yeah.
know, as a kid,
Yeah.
what did you love doing? How did you
Oh,
play?
well, I played a lot outside, a lot of um little I think I was always very kind of theatrical. Like I remember my younger brother and I, finding things outside and like having funerals for dead bugs and things like this. Um, and there was my mom's a musician, so there's music in the house, and she would do all sorts of rehearsals and sh one of the things she did with her friends was like condensed versions of musicals. So that this music, and then there was also this great record collection of the classic pieces of music, like the Hall of the Mountain King, all these like Sorcerer's Apprentice, big warhorse kind of orchestral music, where I would like bring out all the stuffed animals and set them up and act out the music. And so music was part of the air in my house. And we had the bad piano in the basement. There was like this old upright, ancient upright that I would go down there and make storms, and like I just was it was very free. It was part of my playing, was making music and little theatrical whatever strange things.
I mean, that's incredible that you had a bad piano and a good piano in the house. Like
Yeah.
two, not one piano. I mean, people barely have one piano. You had two in the house. And
Yeah,
your mom is a musician, still a musician at 96 years old.
that's right. She's amazing.
I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So at what point, you're playing music, you're in school. At what point did you say, "Oh, I think that I'm going to pursue this in some way"?
It's so interesting because when I was very young, I was writing musicals and making the neighborhood children perform them and bossing everyone around and charging money for people to come into the basement and see the shows. And, we had a whole thing. And I didn't like necessarily put it together that that's something you could be.
Yeah.
It was, and when it wasn't until high school, I studied piano, I did all the classical piano things. And then in high school, I took music theory, which a lot of people go, eh, music theory. I was like, this is the math and science of music. It's like how keys are related to each other and what are intervals. And this just got me so excited. It suddenly this thing that I was playing with had all kinds of um, other meanings to it. And so that was one thing that set me towards I could do this in life. And the other thing was I took a class, creative writing class.
Mm.
And you know this about me, Nick. I am so uh um averse, let's say, to writing words. The final assignment was like write a short story or an essay. I'm like, I can't do that. So what did I do? I wrote a song cycle about
Mm.
the day in a life. I wrote the words for it, but somehow having this, like being able to sing it and, put it to music, and I recorded it on my little, like some little tape machine. And that was my, and the music teach, I played it for the choir director, and he walked to the English teacher's room and said, "You better give her an A." So that was like, yeah, those things kind of went, oh, I think I could be a musician, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was so with you for a moment. You were talking about the kids in the basement because that's what I did too in the garage. I yeah, corralled the and in many ways, demanded that the neighborhood kids come over and be in my plays that I wrote. And I had a lemonade stand for intermission, and yeah, the whole I had programs, the whole bit, right? But then when you said music theory, you lost me. I was like, oh, I was the kid that was like, oh, music
I
theory.
know
Oh.
a lot of people were like, and for me, it was the most exciting.
Yeah.
It was exciting.
It sounds it. And then also I really related to the creative writing class because I had a teacher in I think it was the eighth grade. It was a class called R&R, reading and writing.
And they
And
didn't write right.
I know R&R, reading and writing. You're like, isn't it R&W? But whatever. But we read books and then we created we were supposed to write or create something based on the book. And so I created these magazines and I got really creative and like not dissimilar. I wasn't creating songs because that wasn't my, forte, but like I created dances and I did this whole, and that class somehow shifted something in me to go, oh, I can't live my life without this.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So you have
Well,
the knowledge now
yeah,
that it's possible for you.
right. So, yeah, I picked a college that had a conservatory and liberal arts. So I could have, I think I knew I didn't want to just be in a conservatory environment. Like I had friends in the physics department and stuff like that. That was helpful.
What year was this?
That I went to college,
Hmm.
um, 72.
Yeah. So you had to have been one of few females in that department, right? Like at that time.
Oh yeah. And I guess that's interesting to say because I don't even um I wasn't quite cognizant of that. E- Except at a certain point, I loved my composition teacher. And one day I went in there and I think I was heartbroken or something, and I was just like teary. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry, dear. Someday you'll get married and a nice man will take care of you."
Oh my God. Ugh.
Oh, I was
What
like,
was
why
your
are you
what was
this?
your response?
I don't think I had one. I don't think I had one. I was in a state at the time. And then it sort of didn't really sink in that he said that till maybe later. I'm like, oh my God, what a strange thing to say. And then, maybe, I don't know, 10 years later, I had come back for some class reunion. And that was after I had music for a play on Broadway. And that teacher was like, we are so proud of you. Like, I still
Sure.
loved him. He was a great teacher. But, this was a time when we didn't have these kinds of expectations, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about 72, the women's movement, right? That
Yeah,
you were in it
I was in
and
it.
you were part of it. And you were a pioneer in many ways in Broadway circles, certainly. I mean,
Mhm.
ha, uh, it was an old boys club.
Yeah, it still is.
Yeah. To a
It's-
to a certain degree, it still is. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely better,
Mhm.
but it is still that.
Yeah, yeah. You have to put on, I feel like I've put on blinders, just focus on what I'm doing. And, part of being a composer this long is just tolerating the world and its ways because it's not easy, not always easy, and there are aspects of it that are not necessarily welcoming for or the expectation. I mean, I think that's the thing about that quote. The expectation wasn't there that I would be a successful composer in the world.
That is
That's
the
just,
truth.
it just wasn't.
Yeah.
And I had to make that for myself. Yeah.
Which is very powerful that you had that capacity, that there had to have been something in your home with your mom, with the way you were raised, with, but also who you were, just who you are in the world, that made you believe no matter what, I'm going to keep going. No matter what, I'm going to pursue, persist. There was something in you. Do you know what that is tangibly, like what that is for you?
I'm not sure. I think, I'm stubborn, which maybe is helpful. Um, and I think that, it's interesting. I feel like uh, I focus on what I want to do and not necessarily, I don't always have like, I, a 5-year business plan, let's
Yeah.
say. I don't have a business mind. Like, I'm not good at that. So, it's weirdly survival, I think. And it's like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, because there are in any creative career, there are lean times, there are bum
Yeah.
times, and I'm still here, right? Like there are times that are flush, and there are times that are very lean. What have you
Yeah.
done during the lean times to keep yourself in the right headspace and to keep yourself moving forward?
Um, well, during the lean times, I'll like for during COVID, for instance, there's nothing going on out there. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to write some piano solos. So I wrote a book of piano solos and then I published it, and now people are performing it. But it's sort of like, I'm going to just take this as a writing retreat. I think that's what I do in my head. It's like, okay, there's nothing happening out in the world, no commissions. So now I have a writing retreat for myself.
That's good because I know that for me during some of those lean times, particularly early on, I would go into speaking of fight or flight into fight or flight, and I would start to panic.
Mm.
In my acting career, my early acting career during the lean times, I would panic. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to make it? How am I going to pay my bills? You know, all of those stories began to show up. that is a big part of that. Management is a big part of it. What is your daily routine like?
Well, that's evolved over. I'm just going to clear my throat for a second.
Sure.
Sorry. Um, that's evolved over the years. I didn't used to have a daily routine, and now I have a very specific daily routine. I it kind of starts on Sunday when I'm like having some serious couch time. Like I try to not um be on my computer too much on the weekends. Just be, just take a break from all that. But I do lay out my week. I look at my calendar and I'm like, what do I need to get done? What projects do I want to work on? What self-care am I going to do? Who am I going to see? Because when you're a composer, you can get very isolated because it's a single person job. You need quiet, you need to be by yourself. And so you can get very isolated. So I kind of look through the week and make sure I am like I have a friend in the neighborhood and we go jogging sometimes, or what I like to say, wogging, where we run a little, we walk a little. It's not, we're not training for the marathon, but it's like it's a very social thing. And so that's important to kind of check in with friends and make sure you're not um, in a cave. And I do a little meditation every morning before I start my work. Um, I do some yoga, short and sweet, but just kind of wakes everything up. And then, my calendar on Sunday, I've set up my calendar. So, and I know things about myself, which is like the morning time is my best writing time. So I try to reserve that, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's like creative time. And then like after lunch, I try to do like businessy things. Like if I have to do filing or, taxes or whatever. I try to leave that to the afternoon and um yeah, and I put everything in different colors so you
Yeah,
can just
same.
glance and see like, oh, there's not enough gym. I go to the gym a couple of times a week.
Yeah.
You know,
I time block as well. And I
yeah.
color code it so that I can look at my calendar and see, well, am I not doing any self-care this week? Then I need to make sure I get it on the calendar, basically. And not dissimilar. I obviously have a morning sadhana practice that I talked about on this podcast, probably at nauseum for people. But
Well, I think the thing I do is based on what I learned from you. The
oh, yeah.
sequence, the
The
sequence.
sequence. Oh, yeah, the sequence that I taught you at the retreat. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. I love that you're still doing it. I really do. That's super special. That lineage of passing that down is important. So I'm
And
honored that
it's
you're.
gone to many countries.
Yeah, yeah, truly.
Wherever I go, I do it.
Yeah. You mentioned that composing is really a solo experience, that it can be quite lonely. Where does collaboration come in your work? I know we have collaborated. You um wrote the score for one of my films. We've worked on a musical together. How does collaboration fit into it with you now? How do you work in collaboration with people?
Um, it's interesting. Different collaborators is a different style of working. Um, I have one collaborator now. We're writing a musical where we work in the same room. He writes, I write the music, and we're just in the same room. It's so weird. I've never had that before,
I was gonna say,
but
that's interesting. That's
it's
unusual.
yeah. Well, he used to be music director he music directed three of my musicals. So
Okay.
he's a stage director and a librettist, but he also is very very good musician,
Mm,
very literate.
mm.
So I'll be writing and he'll go, "Oh, that's great. I think you should change the key here." He gets like really into my scores and I trust him. So I like it.
That is the key word right there.
Yes, trust.
Trust. Without trust and collaboration, it's like a marriage. You know,
Yeah,
you're married in many ways when you decide to get into quote unquote bed with somebody,
yeah,
you're in it with them.
yeah.
And you have to trust the collaborators or it won't work, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing about this particular collaborator is I can do the same thing with his script. I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this scene feels overwritten, or this lyric isn't really sitting right. And there's we just kind of go back and forth into each other's world, and without nobody's feelings get hurt. Yeah, there is a mutual respect and trust that makes that work.
I like that too. Mutual respect. That's equally as important as the trust that it's almost like even if you disagree, you agree to disagree and what's best for the project in a way. Like,
Yeah.
you're not always going to win, quote unquote, the
Right.
argument, just like in a relationship. Sometimes with Michael, I say, "Okay, do I agree?"
Well,
No,
you
not
know,
necessarily. But you know
I just,
what? At the end of the day, what's more important? Me
that's
being
right.
right or our relationship?
Well, the other thing is like some of the questions are like, okay, well, let's see how it works when we have a workshop.
That is true.
Let's see if this
That's
word
very
lands.
true.
And so I'm like, we leave certain, like if we can't agree on something, we'll leave it
Yeah.
at that level.
That's really true. And unanswered questions until you have more information, basically. Yeah.
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 So and then other collaborators, it's more of um, you know, people send me words, I write a little sketch, I send it back, it becomes that kind of, we'll meet up and try stuff, but the work is separate. Um, and then I have like um, a music director collaboration, that it's so there's so much history with her. I send her stuff in progress. And again, trust. I'm like, what do you think? And she's so good at like giving feedback and saying, I think the beginning needs to have a little more sweep to it. Or, she'll just, and she knows me and my work and will defend. She's the defender of the score. When we're in, production, that's her job.
It is her job. That's exactly her job is to defend the score, defend the integrity of the score, basically.
Right. But
Yeah.
in the writing process, I will send her stuff that I want to know what she thinks. And she's very good at letting me know.
You've had an interesting relationship with obviously you've crossed many genres. You have
Yeah.
written for music for plays, you've written for film, my film. You've written for primarily for opera and musical theater, as you said, a book of piano songs.
Chamber music.
You have orchestral music that's being recorded in the Ukraine. Like
Yeah.
I mean, you've really done it all in many ways. How have you balanced the relationship between all of it?
You mean the different worlds?
Yeah, the different worlds, because they're
Yeah,
very different
they
worlds.
are very different worlds. I think my definition of music is just expansive.
Mm.
I would say I loved the Beatles and Joni Mitchell as much as I loved Bela Bartok and Johann Sebastian Bach. I love it all. And so that part, my own aesthetic is um, very inclusive, I would say. And then, so when I'm writing for the chamber music concert stage. It's going to be a different language than what I would write for a musical theater. Um, but I think my musical theater writing and that musical theater and opera, the both worlds are like musical theater worlds. Your stuff is kind of operatic, and the opera world says your stuff is kind of musical theater. And I think I kind of live in the middle of those things in a way. Yeah.
And well, I also think that this is some of the reason for your longevity, the success, is
Mm.
that you are so versatile that when one area might dry up or the doors aren't opening in one area, you've been able to turn around and open a door that's behind you or beside you or in front of you in a different way.
Yeah, it's just interesting how like I did music for a audio book last year, a book of poetry, where it was like music during the beginning and then in between sets they would have like three poems and then a little music and that was like, oh, this is a whole new genre. Very interesting. But I think I like new things. I like exploring. I'm, yeah.
No, yeah, I was going to say I think that as we get older, we can tend to sometimes get stuck into what we do.
Mm.
Particularly if we get known for one specific thing, then well, that's what you are, that's what you do, and you need to just repeat that on. But you're a true artist in that you have really never stopped learning. That's for sure. You're very much a student. I mean, one thing I know for certain about Kim Sherman is that she is a student of music, but she's also a student of life, and you're constantly evolving and learning and growing.
That I think that's what keeps you alive in a way. I mean, look, we were talking about my mother earlier, and she's 96 and she is a working musician. And half the time when I'm on the phone with her, she's like, "Oh, I have to go now. I have rehearsal. We're playing a new piece and it's really hard."
Hmm.
Like, and I looked at one of the scores. I'm like, that is hard.
You're right, Mom. That
That's
is
hard.
hard.
Oh, she's learning new things, and I think it just like keeps her vital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got some genes. I mean, that is
I,
96. That's some genes.
yeah,
You got another however many years ahead of you, 30
I
years
know.
ahead of you.
That's what I think. Like, I better keep
So
going.
what do you see the future? You said you don't do 5-year business plans, but is there something that you haven't done yet that you would like to do in your future?
Oh, that's so funny because this connects back to our one of our retreats. Remember when I made that storyboard for the opera,
Yeah.
8,000 Friends?
Yeah.
Well, I am pulling it out and I am going to try to write the libretto, which is something I've never done before. I'm going to write, I'm willing to fail,
That's
but
amazing because I
I
think that
have a singer that wants to do it. And so, and she's all in. And that's sometimes helpful, actually. When you go, what are your inspirations? Deadlines,
yeah.
performance, somebody that wants to do it. Um, yeah.
Kim, you're inspiring me to bring back the creativity retreats, perhaps, because the fact that that was on that board all those years ago, what's 10 years ago now, right? And now it's coming to fruition. And you saw it, and yet we're very much in resistance about writing it. And I've been nudging you over the years to write the libretto, right? Over and over again, I'll be like, hey, hey, hey,
Yeah, yeah,
hey,
it's
and
happening.
and so is your sadhana nodding
That's
you, in
I think you're
meditation,
right.
you
I
know.
think that's true.
So that's really fantastic, and I'm excited. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you, and I can't wait to
I
hear
will
to,
have
to
you,
read it.
I'll have you read it in progress.
Yes,
How
please.
about that?
I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you can tell me this scene is too long or not enough words.
Not enough here. Yeah. Okay. What would you, now looking back on this beautiful journey you've been on, what would you tell that little girl?
Ooh, that is a good question. I would tell her to speak, speak her mind, because I think that, I've spoken through my music. That's how I kind of got through a lot of, you know, tough times in life, is I'll just go to the music. And there's something very powerful about just actually speaking your mind. And um, yeah, I kind of held back a lot in my own expression of um, maybe even like, that teacher that said, don't worry, some guy's going to marry you.
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to think about that.
You know,
And
I have a client who is writing a book, um, 70 women turning 70, about
mm,
mentorship, about how they
mm,
didn't have mentors
yeah.
and how they are now mentoring the 50
Mhm.
something, and the 50
Yes.
something needs to be mentoring the 20 something, right? Or the 30 something. And but that generation, that which is, you're a tad younger than that, but that's your generation ultimately, right? Oh,
70.
oh, you are 70.
I look
Oh,
pretty good.
you look amazing. But your generation didn't have mentors ultimately, female mentors
Yeah,
specifically. Yeah, you had this guy who was telling you, who's
you're gonna
you
get
know,
married,
to go get
be taken
married
care of.
and get taken care of. That's not a mentor, right? Ultimately, you
Yeah,
said he was a great teacher, so he mentored you in that way, but not in other ways that you needed. So yeah, of course you need to tell
yeah,
that child within to
right.
speak her voice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many situations in life I have been in where I'm like in a room and I'm like, there's a game being played here and I don't know the rules.
Mm.
Like, whatever is the situation, there's like a way of doing academia that I had no idea what the how to do it. And so, and even like in theater, I just kind of learned by doing, but I sort of held, I'm like, I'm holding back and I'm watching. That's, it's not expressing yourself necessarily, but yeah, that's where mentoring would have been very helpful. So maybe I would say to that little girl, find your mentor.
Yeah.
Find a mentor.
Find a mentor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you for this wonderful conversation today, of course. I treasure our friendship, honestly.
me too. And I love having these kinds of conversations.
Where can my audience find you? And where can they get your music?
Well, both answers. My website is www.kdsherman.com.
We'll make sure
The
to put it in the
D
show notes.
D is important. Yeah, all my music is I have a little publishing company um called Plumber's Daughter, which we can talk about that later. And yeah, a lot of my music is available through that. And now I have some tracks that are available in all of the streaming platforms.
Love it.
Kind
So
of fun.
good.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you again
Thank
for
you,
being
Nate.
here. And thank you for listening to the podcast. There's lots of choices out there. There are so many podcasts these days. And I'm so honored that you've chosen and we're, pushing 300 episodes that you're still here listening. Or if you're brand new and just listening, go back and listen to some old ones. We're around and there's some good ones back there as well. Thank you, Kim. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.